One thing you'll notice by glancing through my channel is that I'm a big fan of Kickstarter. Oh hey, that works now. When I made the first Rap Rabbit video, it reminded me of other projects I saw on Kickstarter throughout the years, and there was an unlikely project that a few of my friends were passingly familiar with, as opposed to Rap Rabbit, which only I really seem to care about. The game we're talking about today is called Hex Heroes. If that sounds familiar, it's probably because you were watching Game Grumps in 2014 and saw that they were being added to the game. The game's creator, Mario Castagnetta, seems to have been a fan of Game Grumps from the beginning, seeing as they made Aaron and John custom figures of themselves and brought on Grant Kirkhope to make the music for the game. Grant is a well-known composer in the gaming space, but he was also thrust more so into popular internet culture at the time due to appearing on Game Grumps, so I feel like his connection to the game is closely related to his connection to the Grumps. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look at the Kickstarter campaign. On March 16, 2014, Prismatic Games put out a trailer for their game in their Kickstarter campaign that was slated to drop the following week. On March 25th, the Kickstarter went live. The page talked briefly about the gameplay, which would feature one commander player managing resources, while up to 4 other players would pick different classes and harvest materials and fight enemies. They discussed various modes that they wanted to add, such as a lair mode, which entailed seeking out enemy lairs and clearing them, and a horde mode, which featured you and your group fending off waves of enemies. They talked about how the game was conceptualized during a game jam, but the small time frame of the jam didn't give them enough time to get to the end product they were hoping for. The team also has a fixation with the Wii U, stating that the game is being made from the ground up for the console, and I feel like they felt that Hex Heroes would be the boost that the struggling console needed. The page didn't launch with stretch goals, as they wanted the community to vote on the goals as time went on. The community would also vote on 4 of the 8 classes in the game. They mentioned that the board game aesthetic and Grant Kirkhope's music was supposed to make you feel nostalgic to games you played in the past. This didn't work on me, however, as I was a PlayStation kid and grew up with the superior Croc. The backer awards started off as pretty run-of-the-mill for the time, basically stemming from a copy of the game, to backer-specific cosmetics, to physical merch, to designing content for the game. They had 4 $1,000 designer for a day slots, which seem to have all been filled. I'm wondering what capacity these meetings would affect the game. As you'll see, the game has gone through quite the metamorphosis over the development cycle. There are a few wild additions to the backer awards later on, but we'll get there when we get there. On the second day of the campaign, they announced 3 cameos for the game. Max from Mutant Mudds, Juan from Guacamelee, and Rusty from SteamWorld Dig, all of which were platformers that were slated to release on the Wii U. A few days later, they announced Shovel Knight as a cameo character, and as a way to promote the campaign, Mario voiced in a special episode of Did You Know Gaming focusing on the Super Nintendo. Vitas Varnas was a writer and producer for the channel, and he's a known friend of the Game Grumps.
Michael Rodriguez, and my fucking favorite person ever? Vitas Varnas.
It's been said that Vitas was the person that put Mario in contact with Game Grumps in the first place and led to the Grumps being interested enough in the project to want to be added in. They talked about stretch goals the following day, which added a local versus mode, a journey mode, and added a PC port to get more people access to play the game. They noted that it wouldn't be the same thing as playing it on the Wii U, but as Inafune's translator put it in thetheir project,
it's better than nothing. At least that's my opinion.
After that, they announced some fan art contests, one normal and one using the Nintendo Miiverse of the Wii U and 3DS. A few more cameos got announced around this time, one notably being from another ill-fated Kickstarter project that has yet to come out, that being Subject W from Paradise Lost. The other guest being Lady Faye of Rogue Legacy, which did actually come out. After that, they removed the PC stretch goal and decided that they're making a native PC port as part of the project. They started voting on the final classes, and they went about it like this. They had 12 class ideas that they wanted the community to vote down to 6. And then they would also take the 2 best fan class ideas and add them to the mix, and then have their fans vote the final 8 down to the last 4 classes and add them to the game. They added the Drifter from Hyper Light Drifter as another cameo, increasing the amount of Kickstarter royalty in the game. They said in an interview that they wanted to potentially get Beck from Mighty No. 9, Shantae, Raz from Psychonauts, and Steve from Minecraft as cameos if possible. They would eventually try to start a tweet campaign to get the attention of Notch to get Steve on board, but this was a few months before Microsoft acquired Minecraft, so Notch had bigger fish to fry. The campaign was halfway over but only 1/4 funded, so they proposed a referral campaign to get the word out. If you referred 5 people to the game and they backed it, you would get bumped up to the next reward tier. On April 8th, the Grumps were finally revealed as characters, all Ross, Aaron, and Danny of them. The campaign was nearing its final week, and they announced Cyrus from Wizorb being added as a cameo, and urged their fans to tweet at Notch to try and get Steve. They used a website called Thunderclap to signal boost the project, and while they had met the goal they had set for Thunderclap, they were still a ways off from being backed on Kickstarter. They announced an AMA with Grant Kirkhope, which just seemed to kind of come and go, and then announced another cameo from a Kickstarter game which also hasn't properly released, Heart's 4th Alicia. Around this time, Mario added their original art pieces as backers for $450 each, which have not sold. Despite this, Mario decided to offer a $4,000 art course for a year, designed to get you experience for making art in the games industry. Prior to Hex Heroes, Mario did make an artsy game called The Bridge, but I don't think the experience you could get from Mario would translate as well as they thought it would. They boast that it's a fraction of the price of art school, but having the prestige of an art school or a big name would do much more than Mario could. Like if I trained under Yoshitaka Amano and my resume was full of pictures of Cloud looking like this, it'd do way more than having an art tutor with one project to their name signing off on my work. Even for all his faults, being tutored by Inafune would be a more valuable investment, because despite how bungled Mighty No. 9 was, he's got a storied career in the industry and would be more of a draw for me. After that, Mario was doing pledge video game streams where collecting 10 puzzle pieces and Banjo-Kazooie would prompt the viewers to donate $1. I don't know if that's a lot because I played Croc, but I'm going to assume it's nothing crazy. The Banjo streams seemed to go really well, and they continued up a stream for Donkey Kong Country 2, and also announced the rest of their stretch goals, less than 24 hours before the project was slated to end. They said that they'd take PayPal donations during the development so they can implement the stretch goals when they reach them, but if they wanted the stretch goals, they should have either added them way early into the campaign, or just scrapped them for potential DLC. In any case, they met their goal on April 24th, 2014. They took a few weeks off to give themselves a break from the constant updates on Kickstarter and hit the ground running in the middle of May. In their first progress update on May 18th, they showed off that they modeled all the character models and noted some changes they made from previous models. They even took the woodcutter and made it look like me. 2 weeks later, they announced that they wanted to enter a vertical slice of the project into IndieCade 2014 to drum up some interest. A vertical slice is basically a demo of the game to show off how it's supposed to play, so fans or investors can see how it all works and decide to follow it. They intended to release a beta build around the time of IndieCade, whether they were entered in the convention or not. 2 weeks later, they announced that they submitted their build, showed off their animation rigs, and announced a Mario Kart tournament. 2 weeks later, they congratulated Shovel Knight's release by streaming Shovel Knight, and spoke generally about features they wanted to implement, like minigames for gathering resources. They announced that they would be going to GamerX, an LGBT+ game convention, to network and get the word out about Hex Heroes. They kept chugging away, trying to update every few weeks, all while sneaking in topical trends from the time, like the Ice Bucket Challenge or a podcast discussing Gamergate. They announced that they hadn't gotten the beta release out yet on December 31st, and said they were hoping to release it soon and get some feedback. They submitted a build of the game to the Independent Games Festival and said that the beta they'd be releasing would be pretty much what they sent to IGF. On December 31st, they had said that their animator and 2 of their 3 programmers had left the project, and said that they'll be delaying the game to the summer of 2015 optimistically, and gave rough percentages of what still needed to be completed for the game. In February, they talked about going to the Game Developers Conference to show off their game, though they weren't doing so as official guests of the event. They showed off a new logo on February 24th and announced that they were leaving for GDC. The follow-up update on March 13th, 2015 talked about how their game wouldn't run on the Wii U that they were presenting with. Our biggest task now was getting the game up and running on the Wii U. Nintendo had sent us a special event Wii U, separate from our development Wii U, that we could take with us, but it was not the same hardware we had been using all along. Without going into too much technical detail, building a game to one piece of hardware is no indication of how it will play on another. Even when our team is playing the game on our computers, we will sometimes experience different results. Although we knew to expect this, we did not expect the game to be non-functional. especially from one Wii U to another. On our first attempt, we got as far as selecting our characters, and then the game would freeze. It's a little jarring to go from having a functional game for months and then seeing it crash. It didn't take too long to fix that issue, but more troubles abounded. We were trying desperately to get Hex Heroes working on the Wii U up to the last minute. The crew was able to set up a makeshift PC station to let people experience the PC build, but the floundering Wii U port was a blow to their morale. They talked briefly about Gamergate in the Independent Games Festival and mentioned updating to Unity 5, which was just released. Nearly 2 months later, they come back with a progress update, showing off the new combat system and announced what still needs to be done. They had to finish the last 3 hero types, various enemies, the menus, environment assets, the layer mode, sound effects, and villager NPCs. Summer was coming fast, and they said that they may end up delaying the game again if it calls for it, which it seemed like it would. 1 month later, they were showing off the new graphical user interface for the game, as well as their idea for the menu screen. After 4 months of silence, they came back in October with a trailer showing off the game in action and a spring 2016 release date. They also show a new cameo, this time featuring Turing from 2064 Read-Only Memories. They go on to say that they're planning to release the alpha build to their backers that weekend to get more feedback to get to the beta and eventual release of the game. In December, they were back on the game conference circuit and they were showing the game off at GX3, which was this year's iteration of the Gamer X conference they attended last year. Much like GDC, they were hoping to show their Wii U build, but once again it wouldn't function and they had to show off the PC build. The game that they were adamant would be played best on Wii U and were hoping to release in 4 months optimistically has not run a single time on the intended hardware when showing it off. Regardless of this insane setback, they wanted their fans to vote for Prismatic Games to win a contest that Intel was hosting at GX3. They returned from GX3 with some positive feedback and some new perspectives to iron out. They found that people playing the game wanted to be able to fight each other and found that the game may need to be a bit more intuitive as they spent a great deal of time explaining everything to every new player. 3.5 months later, they started off 2016 by announcing they had gotten an investor and that the investor got them a booth at GDC. They lay out the truth of the scope of the project and note that after the initial Kickstarter, they had only about $20,000 to make the game with, so the production side of things was a little slower because they had to work day jobs to keep themselves afloat in the interim. They go on to say that they still haven't gotten a working Wii U build and that they were going to show off the PC build at GDC. So it's March at this point, which is dangerously close to spring 2016. The main console they had been hyping this game up for can't even run the game. They returned from GDC 2016 with an honorable mention for Best in Show and mentioned that Mark Griffin, a Nintendo indie liaison, was really into the game. They said that they planned to hammer out the Wii U version, probably because they finally realized that getting Nintendo on board with a game that can't run on their console might be a bit tough. 3 months later, in summer, not spring of 2016, they updated the backers about the Wii U woes and the team they have on board to get it running. I guess the biggest issue was they had a lot of bloat from the hexagons and models, and they found that not loading the stuff you can't see helped get it running on the less powerful console. They also mentioned yet another conference they were attending, Casual Connect, the following month in July. At the end of September, they discussed how they finally figured out the direction they wanted to take their combat by seeing how people engaged with it at Casual Connect. They had a timed hit system that rewarded rhythmic button presses, but people would opt to mash their attack buttons and brute force it. They realized that by locking the combat to the hex grid that the game is built on, it forced the players to engage in combat in a specific way, but would allow them to use their implemented timing system and have it feel natural. They also mentioned a return to Gamer X, which seemed to be Prismatic's timeshare by that point. A month later, the Nintendo Switch was announced, and they had put out an update speculating on how Hex Heroes would function on the platform. They mentioned that they know backers who traded in or sold their Wii U's and would be open to allowing them to redeem Switch versions instead if the game was able to be successfully ported to Switch. This update, musing about the Switch, would be the last update of 2017. On January 8th, they released a video showing off how combat works and their new grid system. They said that they would be releasing another update after Nintendo had their Switch presentation on January 12th. On March 14th, they talked about how they haven't gotten a Switch dev kit yet, and that very few indie devs at that point did have one. They had spoken to Nintendo at GDC 2017 and were informed that Nintendo didn't want any ports of games for the first 6 months of the console's life. They stated the game was on the home stretch and that they were filing for certification to release the game in a few weeks. They mentioned that some cuts needed to be made and that the game would launch with the Knight, Worker, Rogue, Scout, and Mage, and that the Seraph, Elementalist, and Necromancer would be added later on. They mentioned that 3 of the 5 worlds would launch with the game and the remaining 2 would be added as free DLC later on. They also said that the Steam version would be releasing as early access. Weeks turned into months, and in January of 2018 they came back with another update. They stated that the game was still coming, but development had slowed way down because the team they hired were working on another game at the time. They discussed that the team wasn't approved for a Switch dev kit. They talked about possibly branching off to Xbox or PS4 if they couldn't get the backing from Nintendo. The fact that the last update over 8 months ago promised the game was on the home stretch was not lost on the backers, and they started to make themselves heard in the comments.
Can you just please confirm this is dead? Tell us you're tired, you failed, it's okay, put a bow on it, we can all move on. Over a year since the last can't wait for the next radio song. This is the last radio song. You asshole. Actually, can I just get a refund there, and I waited long enough to propose outdated. Nintendo might be perceiving you as Vaporwave.
So this was on July 6th, 2018, and the next update was hot on its heels in June 28th, 2019, a good year and a half later. The only update we got in 2018 other than the January one was Egoraptor talking about it on his Wikipedia page and being audibly confused as to if the game even exists or is still coming.
Anyway, Hansen will voice his own playable character in Hex Heroes. Yeah, I don't know, is that happening? Let me... previously co-created the bridge, upcoming... I don't know what's going on with that. 2016, Best in Play. Huh. Yeah, I don't... Is that out? I don't know if that's out. Well, anyway, yeah, they asked us to do the voice, and they put us in the game, and it's great. It's cool. It seems like a cool game. I don't know if it's going to get produced or not.
The post says there was a lot of updates in the past 6 months, but that still leaves about 12 months unaccounted for. The updates were condensed into a 2-minute video that showed combat and graphic updates. They also revealed their last cameo character, Hat Kid from A Hat in Time. At the end of the video, Mario talks about wanting to get back to monthly updates and wanting to earn back the trust of the community, which still has a very negative outlook on the project.
We've got loads more to show off, this time next month. More enemies, more hero mechanics, more environments, even a new mode separate from the ones that we've promised in the campaign. One that we haven't even revealed yet. We've seen the feedback and the comments, and we understand your frustration. What you need, what you all deserve, are monthly updates, and that's what we're going to do. I know that for some you'll believe it when you see it. That makes complete sense, but we want to redeem ourselves to all the people who made this possible in the first place. Thank you, and see you real soon.
True to his word, there was another update next month, this month showing off a desert biome, showing the refined mage class, and talks about the game still releasing on the Wii U despite the console being dead. They had a more brief August update showcasing the rogue and 2 backer-made enemies. The following month had an update showing the new Bomb Rush mode, and the last update of the year showed changes to the Scout and Worker classes. This year was a marked improvement in the dev cycle of the game. The February 2020 update shows off catapults for crossing chasms and talked about the in-game achievement system for skins and unlockables being finished. In the following month, they showed off the Nightlands, which would be a bonus level. They showed some remixed music and said the game is wrapping up soon. May 30th saw an announcement about the backer villagers finally making their way into the game, and then the next update in April 17th showed off 2 more biomes and some music. Did you notice how I didn't make a deal about this update being 11 months after the previous one? This is the strategy they tried to use as well, and the remaining backers were quick to call it out. They made an update to address the negative comments, questions, and concerns. but all they really said was, "We have timelines and goals, but don't feel comfortable sharing them, and making promises only led to breaking them." The update also showed off a commanderless play mode. This update did nothing to quell the negativity. They had another update 2 weeks later detailing changes to buildings, this time without any gameplay footage to accompany it. The final enemy roundup update, released on September 30th, 2021, coincidentally is the final update on the Kickstarter as of me making this video. It shows off the game's new logo, the finished enemies, mentions that the cut classes are going to be implemented, and they show off their talent for ghosting the remaining backers that they still have. The only action on the page in recent months has been the spurned backers declaring the game dead and questioning if refunds can be revoked since the game will be impossible to deliver onto the Wii U by this time next year. Looking at the Prismatic Games Twitter page, the link to their site loads a generic WordPress page that doesn't appear to have been kept up with. Chris's page is listed in the bio, but his Twitter doesn't seem to be that active these days. Mario is active on his personal Twitter, but they've removed mention of Prismatic Games in their bio. Using the Wayback Machine, we can see that Prismatic Games was in their bio last March, but they removed it more recently. Before we conspiracy theorize about them dissolving the company before the eShop closes to avoid giving refunds, their profile removed the Prismatic Games link in October of 2021. There isn't any earlier time frame showing when it was removed, but the last update for the Kickstarter came on September 30th. So maybe they put out that last update, got disheartened, and just let the company fall into obscurity or something. In the Radio Silence update, the page had said, "It's the policy that refunds will not be issued while development is in progress. We will do our best to honor codes on whatever consoles you currently have." So maybe as long as a little bit of work is being done at a time, they get to stay clear of having to refund anything, but I'd like to believe that they intend to get Hex Heroes out into the world at some point. So that was Hex Heroes. My thoughts on this whole thing is that they just need to release the game in some capacity. Like, multiplayer games, especially online multiplayer games, have been taking off like crazy. Like, look at Among Us, look at Phasmophobia. If they release it, even if it's early access, even if it's buggy, it will find an audience. I feel like they were hoping that the Game Grumps connection right out of the gate would have been enough to get them like way past funded, which didn't happen. But I feel like if they release the game and they get the Grumps to play it, that will generate hype for the game, and they can maybe recoup any losses they've incurred through development, because they've been working on it for like almost 10 years now, so something's got to give here. I don't think it's coming to the Wii U unless they just like plop it out as at the absolute like last moment. I don't even know if you can release games for the Wii U anymore. I think they at this point just need to stick to the PC version, get it out, and if it does well, port it to Switch, port it to PlayStation, port it to Xbox, whatever they can get it on. They just need to release it. I think that they spent a lot of time networking, I guess you could say. Like, they went to that GamerX place like 3 times. They were going to GDC, which I guess is, a great thing for an indie dev, but every time they were showing this game off, it wasn't working, and it just seemed like their priorities weren't where they needed to be. But hopefully we see something more of this. I was showing like the Twitter stuff because I wanted to show that the Prismatic Games thing is kind of like defunct. Please don't go bother Mario or Chris or anybody working on the game. I'm sure they have gotten enough of it over the years, and just going over there and asking them where the game is isn't going to get us anywhere. But this game did give me more games to look at. There's that Paradise Lost game, and there's that Hearts 4th Alicia game. Yeah, it looks like there's no shortage of Kickstarter games for me to dig through. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you want me to cover a specific game, let me know in the comments. I'm probably going to tackle Actually, I'm going to do a smaller video this next time. I'm finally going to do one about Dawn of the Devs. But if you want Hearts 4th Alicia afterwards, if you want Paradise Lost afterwards, if you want another game afterwards, just put it in the comments, and we will go from there. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and we will kick it later.